On behalf of my co-editor and co-author, Rhonda Hinther, and myself, I'd like to start out by thanking the members of the Manitoba Historical Society and the awards committee of the Margaret McWilliams Award for this wonderful honor. Rhonda and I are extremely pleased to see this book come to light and then to receive this sort of recognition. I've been involved with the Historical Society for a very long time, and I can't tell you how much this means to me and to Rhonda. The book is rather interesting, I think, because it comes together. It actually came together out of a workshop that Rhonda and myself had organized, actually with not just help, but the active sponsorship and heavy involvement of the Canadian Society for Ukrainian Labor Research. People like Lily Stearns and Brent Stearns were just phenomenal in terms of the work. We brought together not just a national, but actually an international cast of folks to participate in this workshop back in 2015 in the summer. And we hosted it at the Ukrainian Labor Temple. And the folks from the Association for United Ukrainian Canadians did a wonderful job helping us to host this. And we were able to hold, as a workshop, we were able to have all of these people who were academics, who were activists, in some cases in the redress movements, and also survivors and the children of survivors of internment, civilian internment. And Rhonda and I were so impressed by the quality of these presentations. We had these wonderful interactions going on. Because it was a workshop, no one ever missed a session, and everyone got to participate in each and every session. And we kept on hearing how these diverse experiences of civilian internment, we went from World War I up until yesterday. We had Dennis Edney there, who was the longtime pro bono lawyer for Omar Khadr. And it was amazing how often we would hear people say, I didn't know that this was the same for this group or for that group. And we had this incredible interaction between people from the Ukrainian Canadian community, the Japanese Canadian community, Serbian Canadian community. We had people from museums. We spent so much time talking about the development of how we can present what we would refer to as negative heritage, not the great triumphalist story of Canada. And the book that emerged out of this, after a lot of editing and a lot of begging to contributors, is, I hope, and I know that Rhonda shares this hope as well, that it is a work that makes us think about and understand the incredible fragility of civil liberties and human rights. You know, in a democracy like Canada, where we pride ourselves now on being multicultural and inclusive, these things are still very frail. When we look back at the history, starting with the First World War and the War Measures Act and the way that it was used, both in the First World War and then during the interwar period, using different methods instead of the War Measures Act, and then when the War Measures Act comes back into effect during the Second World War, and we see the treatment of Japanese Canadians, of left-wing Canadians, many of them ethnic, people who are having all of their civil liberties stripped away from them, even if they didn't undergo internment in formal terms. You know, the Japanese Canadian example is amazing. There were only actually about 782 Japanese Canadians actually interned by a strict legal definition. But over 20,000 were evacuated from the West Coast and effectively forced into labor situations and labor camps, or working on sugar beet farms in Alberta and Manitoba. And I hope that this book tells those stories in a way that the average reader will really come to understand how often civil liberties have been violated because people didn't look the same as someone else, not because they were a real security threat, or because they believed something that was outside of the norm. The book also, I think, makes a valuable contribution by bringing to light some stories that have really never been told before. The story of German merchant seamen and the importance of their time in internment camps in Canada. and some remarkably different takes on the poor, unfortunate German Jewish refugees who'd gone to Britain and then ended up being dumped into internment camps in Canada. And here were folks who were actively anti-fascist, and they ended up being interned for a big chunk of the war. And their story is told in two very different ways in this book. And I think that there are some remarkably different takes. We also look at the way some of the contributions examine the way that we remember and commemorate this sort of negative heritage. And those are really eye-opening in so many ways. It's a broad-ranging book. I hope that people will enjoy reading it. But once again, I cannot thank you enough for the honor that the Manitoba Historical Society has given to Ron and myself and to all of our contributors. So thank you.